Okay, so in yesterday's class we were discussing like VB script introduction. So what is programming languages? So what are scripting languages? So what exactly the difference between programming language and scripting languages? Then VB script introduction we were discussing. So in VB script you will come across like shell scripting, active directory service interface, and WMS scripting. Really this much in detail is not required for you, but same time it's not that much difficult to work with, it's not that much difficult to know. Okay. So that is what we discussed. Along with that one we were discussed how VB script will be helpful for you in implementing your framework in your QTP. That is what we were discussed. Okay, then we start up with like VB script like basics like variables, arrays, constants, data types. Okay, so these are the different stuff we'll take to look for. As you aware of like any of the programming language, if you go for these are the very basic concepts you will come across in every programming language. Okay, so data types, variables, constants, conditional statements, iterative statements, everywhere, every programming language, every package, the concept will be same, but the thing is syntactic rules and grammatical rules may get vary. Syntactic rules and grammatical rules little bit may get vary. Okay, that's what we'll try to see. Okay, so in VB script, in C or C++ or Java, whatever the programming language, if you go, there are so many data types you will come across. In your mathematics, you will come up with like integers, reals. Okay, integers means 1, 2, 5, 10, 100, 1000. These kind of things you can consider as integers, right? So in any of the variable you have to store integer means int x, something like that you can define that variable. It will allow you to store only integers. No, you want to store real numbers like fractions. Mathematical term you will call it as like fractions, like 2.3 or 5.7 or something like that, some fractions. Okay, so that one you have to do means you can go for like float, you can define it as float, exactly like characters also you make it gender, mrf, that kind of time you can go for like characters or strings, your first name or last name you have to store. That point of time you can go for like defining that variable as string. Like that in any other programming language, date also. Okay, date also you make date of birth you want to store, that field you can define it as like date data type. Like that any of the programming language, if you go for any so many data types you will come across, but VB script is little bit different. Okay, so only one data type you will come across. Data type means like which type of data you are going to store in the variable, that is nothing but like data type. Okay, so variant, one common data type you will come across in your VB script. One common data type you will come across in data type in VB script. So once you define any of the variable with this data type, any kind of data you can store. Like if you want to store integer, it will treat it as a integer. If you store character, it will treat it as a character. If you want to store string, it will consider as a string. Like that once you define any of the variable with variant, any type of data you can store into that data type. Okay, that variable. So holds different kinds of data. So default data type provided by all functions. Okay, so this is default data type in any of the function. Function means like you can make main program as sub programs for better management and maintenance purpose. I will be explaining in detail later. As of now you can remember like main program, you can make sub functions, sub programs. Those sub programs you can call as functions. Okay, so subtypes are there are some like empty, boolean. If it is boolean means it will allow you to store like true or false kind of values. Okay, so object, error, string. Okay, so date and time, double, byte, single, long, like the so many data types over there. Okay, so many subtypes over there. Empty, what is the difference between empty and null? Empty stores 0, null it will permanently delete the location. In that location, the location, normally the thing is, whenever you assign any of the whenever you define any of the variable internally in your location, in your hard disk, it will try to allocate some space for that variable. Okay, whenever you define any of the variable in any of the programming language in your computer's memory, it will allocate some location, some space for that variable. Okay, so empty means that location will be there and there it will get value 0. Okay, so null it won't go, that location is gets deleted. Okay, that is the purpose of looking null. Boolean, integer, like whenever you have all these things is not really required. You want to know means you can go for variable. Variable is nothing but like placeholder, that's what I said, right? So whenever you define any of the variable internally in computer's memory, it will allocate some space. So in VB script, not only VB script, any of the programming language if you go for, there are two types of variables. Those are scalar variables and array variables. Okay, scalar variables and array variables. Scalar variables means stores single values. Scalar variables stores single values, like independent employee, let us suppose. So employee ID or first name or last name or department. Okay, that is single variable, single value, right? Those type of variables you can go for like scalar variables. But sometimes in this class who all are working, all those employee IDs you have to store in one variable. You may get that kind of requirement. So at that point of time you can go for like array variables. At that point of time you can go for array variables. So in array variables, multiple values of single data type you can store. This is what you have to remember. All employee IDs you can store in one variable. In this class who all are working, all those students first names you can store in one variable, one array variable. All those first names means all the students first names are strings only, right? Exactly, last names also, all last names also strings only, right? So all colors you can store in one array variable, all colors are strings only, right? So when we go for like really it practical oriented, at that time you'll get very clear picture like which kind of you can go for like scalar variables, which kind of situations you can go for like array variables. As of now you can remember the concept just. Okay, so any of the programming language if you go for like identifiers, one concept you will come across. Whatever we are discussing like strings, constants, arrays, variables, constants, data types, iterative statements, these one you can consider as identifiers. Like string student name or first name. So here first string is nothing but like reserved word. Okay, string, you are defining it as like string x. X means variable, string is nothing but like reserved word. Any of the programming language if we go for, there are some built-in word or reserved words and user defined words. String int in VB script, one common data type you can use, that is nothing but like dim, dimension, dim, dimension. Okay, so once you define any of the variable with a dimension, you can store any type of data in that variable. Okay, so like that, any of the programming language if you go for, some reserved words will be there. Exactly in VB script also you will come up with some reserved words. Okay, so those words defined for those words purpose predefined by your programming language. We are into VB script, right? So those keywords defined, predefined for specific purpose. So those one you cannot use for variables, variable names. Okay, so identifiers of variable names you can consider it as those variable names you have to give means like dim x, dim student name, like that variable names you will use, right? For those variable names you will try to follow some process, some rules and regulations. Okay, so that variable names can contain alphabets and digits. Just a second. Okay, so in QTP, I mean like in VB script, you can come up with one common data type dim int, employee ID. Here you see dim dimension, you are looking in bold. Employee ID is variable, your it's displaying like normal. If you want to use, okay, like int string means you can use it up, absolutely no issues. But they're having like one option means why you want to go for like again independent. Okay, if you want to use you can use it up, absolutely no issues. Okay, so here dim and int, how is looking like bold. Normal variables is not looking like bold, normal. Okay, so that means like what does it mean? Those words are reserved words in your VB script. Okay, so those one you cannot use for variables again. So int again are dim int, I cannot use like this. Okay, reserved words you cannot use like variable names. Okay, so meanwhile that means like you have to come up with like naming variables names, you should follow some standards. So your variable may contain letters and digits like first name, like that you can give, or first name 1 2 3, or some first name whatever you feel like, underscore first underscore name. This is also one more way. Okay, so your variable contains uppercase letters, lowercase letters, digits and underscore. Dot also some it, see these rules may get vary from application to application or programming language to programming language, but almost all rules will get same, but very high level some you may get change. Okay, but the variable names you cannot, must not start, must to start with alphabet. The variable names must start with alphabet. Okay, it should not allow like this something, you should not give like this. Meanwhile, spaces also you cannot give. Spaces first name, okay, like that. Spaces it doesn't allow. Spaces you cannot give. And meanwhile I said like reserved was you cannot use for variable names. And meanwhile special characters also it doesn't allow. Special character, there are so many characters available in your keyboard, right? So like the special characters it doesn't allow. Maximum 255 characters, so you cannot give variable name more than 255 characters, okay. So cannot contain special characters, cannot contain space. So these all are the rules for naming any of the programming language, okay. Should not use keywords, this one I already discussed, okay. Mostly that is what I said, right? So in your programming language you will get a chance to use mostly dim, and two more were there like private and public. This one I will explain you like during functions. As of now you can ignore these three, these two private and public I will explain you during functions. So once you define like this, you have to assign values, means exactly as usual like in your mathematics how you can assign. So first name equal to something like that, some, okay. So like this you can assign values to variable. So whenever you define like this, I was saying, right, so for this variable it will allocate some space in your memory. So while assigning values, this value get stored into that location. Okay, this value gets stored into that location. So like that it will works out. I was saying, right? So that is the purpose of like your scalar variables, okay. So meanwhile one more concept you will come across like constant. Your employee ID never get vary, right? Your employee ID. So at that time you can define it as like constant, okay, constant int employee ID equal to, okay. So like this, once you define any of the variable with keyword constant, so that variable value never get vary, and across this program wherever you want to use this variable, so it will get stored that value, okay. The value will never get vary like that once you define like this, okay. You may get a chance to use, okay. Normally in VB script you are defining like dim, right? That means like any type of data you can store into that variable. So that's why while implementing framework, see in your IT industry nothing is stable, and meanwhile employees also don't stick same price so many years. So that's why what they will do is you are developing the framework, somebody else may get a chance to use, right? So that's why you have to follow some standards while naming conventions, okay. So here employee ID if we give absolutely no issues, but you will try to prefix which type of data you are going to store in that variable. If you prefix, what will happen? So anybody else as soon as he looks, he will get to know, oh, in this variable you are going to store integer kind of data. Right, you will get to know very easily like in this variable you are going to store integer kind of variable, okay. So if it is string, for first name if you give like str, that means in that variable you are going to store string, okay. But there is no, this is not mandatory, okay, but it is necessary. It's not mandatory, but for your convenience purpose is necessary. Okay, so like that you will try to follow some naming conventions. Okay, so first name you are going to store like string. See, again you may think like first name is like string only, but it's not the case for all the variables, right? Some other variables, some different variables you may get a chance in your real time. So not the case for all the situations. This one you can understand. Employee ID means string integer. Anybody can understand very easily, but not the case for all of the variables, right? Okay. So this is nothing but like your these are nothing but like your okay scalar variables. So these are the different things you have to be aware of while going for like scalar variables. Then arrays. Okay, I told already, in arrays you can store multiple values of single data type. Okay, so arrays, how you can define it as okay. Okay, so arrays how it will contain is like name and subscript. Means arrays how you can define it as like uh, what you can say colors. Let us suppose colors. How many colors you want to store? Okay, 10 colors. Okay, like that you can define. Okay, so colors, that means like this is the variable name and this is the subscript. Means remember, array index always starts from 0. That means like here array colors you were given 10 means up to 10 values. That means like 0 plus 10, 11 values you can store in that variable. So what I do is I'll give like 2 colors of 0 equal to Okay, array index always starts from 0. That means you to your define means what is this? Oh, this is wrong. Okay, okay, so arrays index always starts from 0. Okay, so 0 1 2, so that means you are defined here 2. If you give like 3, if you try to, you are given 2, if you try to give like some more value, if you try to assign, it will give you error. You see, okay, it's giving like a subscript out of range. That is what, right? So you were given, you were defined the size of the array. This one normally, this one is nothing but a subscript. That means like size of that array. That means like how many values you want to store in that variable. Okay, so that is nothing but like size of the array. And one thing, array is nothing but like multiple values of single data type. But here I am trying to store some integer, let us suppose. What will happen, you see? Okay, it's working, right? Okay, so why, how is working? It's little bit different from other programming languages. In other programming languages, if you want to store integer, you can store integer, you can define it as integer. If you want to store as strings, you can define it as string. But in VBScript, you are defining it as dim, right? So that rule, it won't be applicable. Okay, so if you want to store multiple values of multiple data types, you can store, but remember that is not good practice. Okay, in VBScript, common data type you will use like dim. So if you want to use in array multiple values of multiple data type, it will allow you to store, but remember this is not good practice. Okay, so you try to go for like common. Okay, it's not good practice. This is what you have to remember. Okay, so this is one way of defining variables. Another way is like, here 4 values, that means 0 to 4, 0 to 3. And remember one more important thing is, in VBScript, variable declaration is optional. What is this? Okay, in arrays, in VBScript, variable declaration is optional. Okay, No, the syntax I forgot. Array up. Normally the thing is array up. Array you have to use. Okay, this is the way you can go for. Sorry. What is this? See, in another programming language, for arrays you will use square brackets, but in VB script you will use parentheses. This is also one more thing you have to remember. Okay, in other programming languages you will use a square bracket, but in VB script you will use parentheses. Okay. Okay, so in VB script, okay, one point I am saying, right? So here variable declaration is optional. Okay, so you can use directly any of the variables, but the disadvantage is like, see, here you are defined like array arr, but here by chance while typing I may give like this, right? While typing I may press like art, or some spelling mistake by commonly I may do. So at that point of time you may think like, with respect to you this is ARR, but QTP perspective, your computer perspective, this is art. So both of them are different, right? So still it doesn't give you any error. Okay, so it's giving like this. Okay, so you have to make your variable declaration mandatory. So you have to make your variable declaration mandatory, means you have to go for like one command option explicit. Okay, once you give this statement, if you doesn't define any of the variable, it will throw you error. See, variable is undefined, variable is undefined, like that it will throw you error. So if you are defined like, then dim error. Now if you go for, okay, see, now it's giving. So variable is undefined, you are given option explicit, but this variable you are undefined. So now you will try to realize, oh, instead of r I have given spelling mistake. So you will try to go here and you will try to change. So that is the advantage of like you make your variables mandatory. Okay, so it's always best practice while implementing framework, you try to make your variable declaration mandatory by using the statement like option explicit. Option explicit. So in there are two types of I can say like what I mean to say is like usage of array variables, each element in the array unique identifier. In VB script, array index always starts from 0. This one I already covered. There are two types of array: single dimensional arrays, two dimensional arrays, and multi-dimensional arrays. Single dimensional array, whatever we discussed, those are nothing but like single dimensional arrays. Okay, so here you are using single dimension, but in your mathematics you may get a chance to define like multi-dimensional arrays, right? So that means like array of 2 comma 2. Okay, that means like 0 comma 0, okay, here you can store 3 by 3. Okay, so array of 1 comma 1 I am giving. 2 comma 2 means it will always start from 0, right? So 0 0 comma 0, 0 comma 1, 1 comma 0, 1 comma 1. That means like 4 values you will get stored. Let us see. Why? Oh, you have to store values, right? Okay, you have to store values here. You have to assign values to variables, right? Equal to 1. Like that you have to assign. For 4 values you have to assign. Okay, then you can get it up. Okay, you have to assign. That means like 2 by 2 4 values you can store in that array. Okay, so remember, like this, how many you want you can come up with. Okay, so this one you can consider as multi-dimensional arrays. Okay, 2 indexes you are using, that is nothing but like 2 dimension. 3 you are using, so those are nothing but like 3 dimensional arrays. 4 dimensions you are using, so that is nothing but like 4 dimensional array. 5 dimensional array. So single dimensional arrays and multi-dimensional arrays you will come across in your VB script. Okay, single dimensional arrays but multi-dimensional arrays, but in your automation framework development you will never get a chance to go for like multi-dimensional arrays. Okay, so you will get a chance like single dimensional arrays in your automation front. So you don't want to go for like multi-dimensional arrays. Even you want to learn, you can learn. It's very simple. Okay, so this is nothing but like multi-dimensional arrays. And one more simple thing is like in your arrays are of two types again. Those are nothing but like static arrays and dynamic arrays. Static arrays and dynamic arrays. If you define this one, so that means here you are going to store two values always. That means like 2 means plus 1, 3 values always. This is static. Okay, so here okay, but sometimes what will happen is while implementing your framework one list box was there. Sometimes that list box is having 4, sometimes that list box is having 5 letters assume. Let us assume that is the situation. So at that time you cannot go for like static arrays, right? So at that time you may get a chance to go for like dynamic arrays. Okay, so at that point of time you can make it as dynamic arrays. Like okay, now you are using 2, you have to change the size of the array in middle. So how you can change is dimension array of, I give just 3. One more I am increment. Okay, if you want to increment how many you can increment, but I have to give values unnecessarily. Okay, so like that, in middle you want to change the size of the array, you can change that one. How? With the help of like read. Okay, so redimension you have to change means, okay, while defining also you have to define that array with redimension. Now it will try to remodify. Okay, see, okay, 0 1 2 3. Okay, see here what I am doing is I am modifying my values, I am modifying. Okay, so if I am executing values also, if you want to modify you can modify. See, first is taking 1 2 3 first array. Once you change the values itself you are modifying. Okay, now the thing is, if I don't define this value, I don't assign these values. Okay, so once I change the array size, I am not assigning values to this array. What will happen? You see why I am telling is, this one your requirement is the existing values you don't want to change. Whatever you are incrementing, only the size of the array you are changing, right? Those values you have to modify. Sometimes you may come across that kind of situation, right? So that point of time, the existing values as usual you have to use. Let us suppose at that point of time you can use one keyword like preserve. Okay, you can use one reservoir, that is nothing but like preserve. Okay, so that means now I have executed. So this one what is giving? Is giving like blanks. Why? You have defined array but you haven't assigned values. Okay, now if I execute, what will happen is so these values it will store 0 1 2, whatever the 0 1 2 you have stored, 0 1 2 like that, those values you have stored, right? So this is first array before resizing. Okay, so now what is doing? You haven't assigned values here, right? But the existing values is not changing. Okay, so then once you changed your array size, you are incremented one more value. That value only you are using. Okay, so however you feel comfortable, you can go. Sometimes you may get a chance to use this one. Okay, sometimes you may get a chance. Okay, single dimensional arrays, multi-dimensional arrays. So like this you can define. So array of 3 means holds 5 values. Why? Array index always starts from 0. Multi-dimensional arrays. Okay, so this is 2-dimensional arrays. So not, this is wrong. Okay, it will store 3 4 12 values, not 6 values. Okay, array index always starts from 0, right? So it will hold 12 values. Okay, static arrays, dynamic arrays. Static arrays, so store specific number of values, cannot alter during runtime. Dynamic arrays means the size of the array you can store. If you want to change values also you can change. If you don't want to change values, existing elements, so you have to extend. So even that is also possible, but how you can use it, like with the help of preserve. So this is the statement, this is the syntax. You can define dynamic arrays. Okay, here square brackets you were given like preserve, right? That means preserve is optional. Array function, this one already we discussed. Okay, so these are nothing but like your variable declarations. Any questions? I have unmuted. No questions? Okay, then what is the time now? 6:40. 6:50 again we'll meet up, right? 10 minutes break we'll get, 6:50 again we'll meet up. Fine, all of you? Okay, then that's